Hello and welcome back to ADK Aquatics, and today we are going to talk about the Ziss brine shrimp hatchery, setup, operation, and brine shrimp in general. To start us off, brine shrimp are found in the wild in San Francisco salt ponds and in the Great Salt Lake in Utah. They are commonly fed as fish food as babies because they are good for helping to get picky eaters to eat, good for preparing fish to breed, good for growing up fry fish, and is a healthy fish food overall. Fairly recently, Ziss has released a brine shrimp hatchery that has made it more accessible for the people who aren't good at or can't be bothered to do a DIY brine shrimp hatchery, as most brine shrimp hatcheries that people had were DIY before Ziss came out with their Artemia blender, as they call it. Let's get right into the setup with the supplies you'll need. So first you're going to need an air pump. I used a USB Nano air pump from Aquarium Co-op. You're going to need the Artemia blender kit, of course. You're going to need some airline tubing for the air pump, some aquarium salt, or marine salt could be used. And you need a heater unless the room you're using is heated to around 80 degrees. And you need the brine shrimp eggs, of course. Now let's look inside and see what comes in the package. Alright, so right when you open it up, you get the main base where the water and the brine shrimp eggs are going to be held. And in there is this rigid tubing which is going to be used to pump air into the system. And here is the lid for the brine shrimp hatchery. And here we have a bag of a bunch of smaller components that will be used, such as this thermometer, which will be used to tell you whether you have the correct temperature or not. And this pipette, which will be used to feed the brine shrimp to your fish. And this valve, which will be used to dispense the brine shrimp from the hatchery. And that air stone, which will be used to pump air into the thing. And here's the main hatchery part, a closer look at that. And of course, here's the stand that the hatchery will rest on. And that's the red thing that you need to attach to the thermometer right here so it can stick into the lid, like I'm doing right now. Then you attach it to the lid like that, and the red thing makes sure it doesn't fall into the water. You gotta make sure it's pushed in as far as it can go. And that's the rigid tubing, like I've attached right there. And you gotta attach your tubing that you provide on the top part there, which will attach to your air pump. And then attach the air stone to the rigid tubing to pump air into the system. And next you put the heater in. And about the heater, I recommend using a heater like the one I'm showing now that has a top part that can be set through the hole at the spot. But I used a heater like the one I'm showing right now, and that one is more difficult because you have to attach the heater part to the side of the thing and then shove the cord back through the top of the thing, and that can be difficult to do. The next step is to cut your airline tubing into two different pieces, one larger than the other, and then attach the valve that is provided to both sides of it and connect it together, and this will help control how much air you want to be put into the hatchery. And now you can reattach it back to the thing, and now you can attach the lid onto the thing. And now you can screw the bottom valve onto the bottom, which again will help control the flow of brine shrimp from the hatchery when you want to take the brine shrimp out to feed. It is now time to set it onto the place where you want it to be. And so first put the base in, and then you can set up the rest of the hatchery next to it. And make sure to put it near to an outlet, because you're going to need the outlet for your heater and your air pump. And here's a closer look at the air pump that I'm using. And you attach the airline tubing to it, and then you can plug it into the wall once there's water in it. It is now time to fill up the brine shrimp hatchery, and I'm about to do that in just a couple seconds now. I'm getting my water ready, and you're supposed to use 2 liters of water approximately to fill it up. It would be okay if you use less, but if you use more, that wouldn't be good because it would overflow. And I'm checking to make sure that I have the valve on tight enough so that there's no water leaking out the bottom. Checking again to make sure there's still no leakage. And since it looks good, I'm going to pour the rest of the water in. And once the water is in, you can plug in the air pump and the heater, and then wait for it to get heated up to the proper temperature to around like 78 or 82 degrees, and then you can put the brine shrimp eggs in after you put the salt in, of course. I am now putting the salt in. I'm putting in 3.5 tablespoons of salt. This is because you're supposed to put in 1 2/3 tablespoons per liter, and since there's 2 liters, that will equal about 3.5. And then once the salt is dissolved and the temperature is correct, we will be putting in the brine shrimp eggs. And as you can see, there's a big clump of salt at the bottom, but don't worry, that will dissolve within like half an hour to an hour. That is the last tablespoon of salt, and now it is about time to put in the brine shrimp eggs once the temperature is correct, of course. I'm putting in about half a teaspoon of brine shrimp eggs. You can put in as many as 2 teaspoons if you want, if you're feeding like an entire fish room, but I only have 4 tanks, and I put in half a teaspoon, and I still think that was too much. So in the future, I think I'm going to be doing like a 1/4 teaspoon. And so get that in, and here's what it looks like once the eggs are in. And so the eggs will be swirling around the hatchery, and they'll have hatched within 12 to 36 hours. If you keep it around 80 degrees, they should hatch within 24 hours. And mine was at 77 degrees, and it took like a day and a half to get hatched, so like around 30 hours, I'd say. And here's a close, and now that now they have hatched, since it has been around 30 hours, and here's a closer look at them. I took these shots with my macro camera lens that I can attach to my iPhone, and this is 25 times zoomed in, and so yeah, you won't be able to see this close with the naked eye. And here's what it looks like with the naked eye. You can still kind of see them, but it's a lot harder to see. You can see those tiny things squirming around, and there's a ton more collecting at the bottom. This is because I have turned off the air and allowed them to collect at the bottom, because when you're ready to feed them, you have to turn off the air to stop them from swirling around, and then wait like about 20 minutes for them to all collect at the bottom. Here's another macro zoomed in shot near where they're all clumped up together, so you can just see how many there are. And here they are. They are ready to be released into the cup. and make sure you have an airline tube connected from the valve into your cup, and you can release the thing and start filling up your cup. Now that I have my cup filled up, I'm ready to take my pipette and feed the brine shrimp. So first, my 20-gallon tank is going to be fed with the brine shrimp, and you can see I have lemon tetras and pork chop rasboras in here, and they went absolutely crazy when the brine shrimp got put in, and they loved it. So now you can just watch them feed, and then we'll move on to my next tanks. Alright, now it's about time to move on to my 29-gallon fish tank, and I'm going to be feeding them the brine shrimp as well. They also all went crazy for the brine shrimp and all ate it up really well, which is good. And so basically it's a consensus with all my fish that brine shrimp is a good fish food to use. So yeah, just watch the fish feed, and then we'll move on to my 5-gallon pea puffer tank. Alright, now I am feeding my 5-gallon tank with my sole resident as a pea puffer, and she was the only one who didn't go like absolutely crazy for them. I did see her hunting around, but I never actually saw her eat any, so I'm not sure if she ate any, but I'm pretty sure she did, but I can't be 100% completely certain that she did eat any, but it's probably because it's a new food to her and she's not used to it. So I will continue feeding it to her and see if I will get better results next time. But overall, I'd say that brine shrimp is a very good fish food to feed your fish, and that the Ziss brine shrimp hatchery works very well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.